Hey there, so today we're going to make this Spidey and Amazing Friends cake. So let's show a couple decorations. First, I'm going to make the moon, and I'm going to use a ball tool to make the little indents that are in our moon. Just random different circles, pressing lightly so I don't go all the way through the fondant. And then I'm going to attach a barbecue skewer so that way I can hold it into the cake. This is a strong barbecue skewer, not a toothpick, because I want it to hold up pretty high on the cake. So kiddo's turning 4, and I decided to use some Spider-Man colors. So we're gonna cut out a number 4 with red, and I'm using an X-Acto knife to cut that out, and then I'm going to use a silicone tool just to kind of soften the edges a bit. And then I'm going to roll out some brilliant blue, which is different than regular blue and satin ice. You can get it at Bake Deco. I like it because it's more of a royal, but I'm going to put the red 4 on the blue to give it a nice blue border. And again, gently using my X-Acto knife to cut a nice little border around the number 4. I'm going to use water as glue since all my fondant is still wet. And then I'm going to place it on the moon so that way we got a number 4 on there. I like to use a cake scraper. It's just what I use to pick up my fondant without having it bend. Anyways, now I am using a cake dummy, and then I was dry fitting the decorations to see how big my next decoration is going to be, which as you can see I'm making some gray fondant, and I'm going to use a 6-inch cake pan to mimic the top of the cake, and then I'm going to use my mat for measuring and cutting, and I'm going to cut the top of the cake, or sorry, the decoration, how I want it. So this is going to be the top of a building. I'm putting a little texture on it. It's actually a leather texture, but it kind of looks like concrete. And then I put it on a piece of parchment paper, that way I can slide it around easily while it's drying and move it around. Now I'm going to make a little wall, and so I'm cutting out or rolling out a nice long piece using my board as a ruler to cut the strip, and then I'm going to make it look like brick. And I'm just going to do it myself and not pay attention too much on how precise it is, because the building that I'm making, I kind of want to make it look a little weathered and dingy. So I just am doing a quick brick because it doesn't have to be super perfect. So I'm kind of letting myself just kind of do it fast. And as you can see, I'm kind of tighten things up with my ruler there, and then I'm going to add some edible glue around the side of my decoration, and I am going to put this wall around. I decide that it's too big, it's too tall, so let's try again. So here we go. I'm going to glue it, and there we go. I attach it, I cut it with my X-Acto knife, kind of round out the corners a little bit, bend the corners a little bit, make sure that it's standing up, and dry fit the decorations that are going to sit on the top of my building that will be on the top of my cake to make sure everything looks good, and just kind of tidy things up a bit. Now, my next decoration, I'm using toothpicks to measure things out around a cake dummy that's the size of the cake. So these are going to be buildings, okay? And I'm doing some math here. I want the buildings to be exact. So I'm trying to see how many buildings I want to make. And then I also want them to rotate around in the same, I want them to be the same level of height going down, so the same difference in height. So I wrote that down on a post-it note. I'm going to use a little bit of Saraceno pasta model mixed with satin ice for these decorations because I want them to be very strong and I want them to dry quickly. So I'm cutting out my buildings to go around my Spider-Man cake, and here's where you're going to see me start to do the math. So I bring my little pink post-it note, and each one, if I remember correctly, was like 3/4 of an inch taller than the next one. I'm going to go ahead and attach these toothpicks, and they can be short because they're going to attach to the cake drum. Using a cake smoother, I'm going to flatten them a little bit. The toothpicks will be covered by the building in front of them, so so that I'm not too worried about the bottoms. But now I'm just randomly cutting the tops of the squares, the rectangles, to make them all a little different from each other, but have that building shape. Now I wanted to make 7, so I'm going to roll out a little bit more fondant, and we're going to create, I think I do 2 right here, and then I end up doing 1. But as you see, again, we're going to use my mat for a ruler, and I'm going to continue on with the mathematically perfect levels of the buildings, and I got one more because we did 7, so we need one to be just taller. This one's going to sit behind the cake and be taller than the cake. So last building that we're cutting out, and then we're going to attach those toothpicks. And you could use any cutting tool. I'm using a ruler just because it's long. But, you know, getting those perfect edges is key. You know, whatever you need to do. Use a silicone tool to soften the edges, or your fingertip, a clean hand. Okay, so now I'm making some red paint out of some Sugar Art red. And I want it to be a little cartoon-like, so I'm letting it be messy. I'm just kind of going in with random lines, making random dots for windows, and I'm only doing the tops because that's really the only part you're gonna see, maybe, and then some edges. But I wanted it to just be kind of, I mean, messy isn't the right word, but it's not so precise. It's not so clean, right? It's just flowing, looking good, looking a little bit animated, a little bit cartoon-like, and that was the goal that I was going for with these buildings. So I was really happy with them, and I did red because I'm going to do the cake in a blue. So I wanted to do something a little bit different than your typical black with yellow windows or black with white windows. And yeah, I just thought this would be fun, and yeah, I'm really glad that I did it. So those are some of the decorations I made for the cake. So let's now move on to the cake itself. All right, so here I am getting the cake ready, and there's that blue icing I was just talking about. We got a nice dark nighttime sky, so we have an Americolor navy blue that I had left over from a cake a few weeks ago. Well, like the food coloring. So I am getting that cake nice and clean and ready to throw some sprinkles. Now, I love doing this. I like to just throw sprinkles on my cake, and it gets everywhere. It's really messy, and that's what I did with some silver sanding sugar. And now I am taking some sprinkle tweezers and placing some silver pearls on, and that's how I get my space effect. There's that piece that you see me make at the beginning of the video, the top, which has been drying for a day or two. But yeah, I dry fit. And then I rolled out some gray fondant to make the side of the building, and I'm cleaning it up with a cake smoother. And then I am going to get it nice and clean. Look at me, just going. And then once I get it into a good place, I'm gonna take a piece of foil and I'm gonna scrunch it up, and I'm gonna give it some texture. Again, we want the building to look dingy, and foil is a really cool way to add texture, and that's not perfect and just kind of looks messy. Yeah, I made some windows out of fondant, right? So white background, and did some little stones. I just made 2 of them. So I went ahead and attached those, and then added that foil texture around the windowsill. Okay, and now I'm just adding random bricks. Okay, I'll turn the cake. There you go. See, just random. All right, so the whole thing isn't bricked. It's just, you know, a little play on your brick building. And then I do end up adding some to the bottom just to kind of hide the seam, because you can see a little blue peeking out. And I'm going to do the same to the top. So when I do add the top of the building back onto the cake, I'm going to actually add another seam. Right here, though, before I add that, I actually dusted. And I wasn't originally planning on using a sheen, like a luster dust. I was originally just going to do a dark gray and just kind of randomly hit the texture and give it some more depth. But I just sampled a part of the luster, and I was like, oh, I kind of like the shine, almost like the night moon shining on the building. So I decided to go for it. I was like, all right, let's make it a little shiny. So it's not like super shiny, but almost like, oh, moonlight shiny. So now I've attached the top. I'm dusting the top very gently, not pressing or putting too much pressure. It's only being held on top from some buttercream, right? And I had fixed the top, and there's a nice little angle of the cake right there. So now I'm going to attach these buildings. So I take a toothpick. I mark where those toothpicks are, and I'm trimming down the toothpick on the building because they're too long. I always do that. I make them a little bit too long, but I'm going to use the cake and the buttercream of the cake to help me hold those buildings up. And then I'm going to attach the toothpick into the drum as far down as it will go. Okay, so, and there it is. you see how I did that. I did all 7 of them, wrapping around, and they're mathematically perfect from each other. So they're the same distance apart. Now I'm trying to figure out where I'm gonna put that moon. I also decided that I wanted to color the barbecue skewer black. That way you couldn't see it as much, and I think that really helped the way I like it. But anyways, there's the cake with the buildings wrapped around and the 3 of 5 figures I decided to use, and I think it turned out really cute. You have to tell me what you think.